Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I've been here in Medellin for almost a year now. Can you believe that? I've been here for almost a year. The quarantine felt like it was forever, and then all of a sudden we're in December. So I know a lot of people come here for dating, so I wanted to talk about it. I have been able to date a few people in my time here, even though we're in quarantine. If we were out of quarantine, I would have had a little more information, a little more experiences for you guys, but I'm going to explain a little bit about what I know, my experience, and some tips that I have for you guys. So I'm gonna talk about a few things today, and if I miss anything, please leave them in the comment section and I'll make a future video on it. I'm going to be breaking this video into a few sections. Dealing with Latin stereotypes, dating Colombians versus dating Venezuelans, dating older women, and my personal experience and how it is dating as an Asian. So I'm gonna go a little bit briefly into tips on how to meet people as well, but because we're in a pandemic, I feel like that would have been a little different, but if you guys want to know, I can still make a video about it. Just leave it in the comment section, and if you guys want that, then I'll make it as well. And lastly, if you guys like this video, please give it a like. It helps the channel out. Subscribe, yada yada. All right, let's get into it. Alright, so a lot of people, when they think of Latin America, they have this kind of stereotype in their head. You know, the brown, olive skin, tanner side, brunette or darker hair. And there's a lot of women that look like that here, but Latin America is really like its own entire world. They have people who are blonde, blue-eyed, who look like they're from the European side. And they have a very big black population as well, who look like they might as well be from Africa. When you look at them, their features are definitely more Latin. Like, there's just something in their faces and the way that they walk that you can tell that they're not from, you know, Africa or from like Europe or something like that. So the best thing about Colombia is that literally all colors of them are beautiful, and I think the same could be said for Venezuelans as well, but I don't know what it is about them. Literally all the darker girls and the lighter girls, they're all just really beautiful. I've also noticed that there is a lot of misinformation online. There's a lot of foreigners that come here and try to sexualize the women or say that they're gold diggers and sluts like that, and if you've been watching my channel, you've probably been recommended one of these videos. Kind of like this fantasy that's being sold. It's almost like relationship porn, if that makes sense, without any of the, you know, actual sex. Like, oh, if you come to Colombia, you can get this like really hot, beautiful woman, and it's problematic for a lot of reasons. For one, usually if the woman looks way out of the guy's league and the guy barely speaks any Spanish, it's probably because she was paid for it. Just think about it, right? I really believe that you could get a really beautiful woman here and probably a better quality woman than what you have. At least for us, for Asians, like back in the States, our options for partners here are definitely a lot larger. But I want to erase this stereotype that like these people are gold diggers and they're sluts and, you know, they just want money and they don't really care about you, because that's not really true. And if that's what you have found, you're probably looking in the wrong places. I think coming here as a foreigner increases your chances of finding a better partner, because Colombia specifically is very elitist, and if you're a foreigner, you automatically go to like the top of the totem pole. If you're just looking at like parqueeras, you're probably just gonna run into a bunch of prostitutes and stuff. But the best way to meet people here, other people have said it, is you have to meet people through other people. Because of that, I highly recommend that you learn Spanish, because if you have local friends, they can introduce you to some of the local women. And the thing about Colombia is that they have like, it's funny because I say this joke with my friends. It's like when I ask one of my friends to like, okay, how hot is she on a scale of 1 to 10? And then he'll say like an 8, and then I say, is she like a Colombian 8 or is she like an American 8? Because a Colombian 8 is an American 10, and then a Colombian 6 is like an American 8, and that's definitely true. For me, I'm totally happy with going after like a Colombian 8, because there's plenty of them here, women that work hard, that really appreciate their family, that don't just want to love you for their money. But if you go looking for like the Colombian 10s, the ones where, you know, the big tits that dress all provocatively and stuff, if they dress like they're working, they probably are. But Colombia, I think their culture is very beautiful, which is why I really enjoy being here. The number one thing that I like about Colombians and Venezuelans, I think just Latin people in general, is how warm they are to their friends friends and family. Here, family is like the most important thing. And I think that's why the quarantine affected them so badly. I've just never felt such warmness from people. I think it was pretty similar when I was in Italy. Those people are very warm too. If you've ever been to like a Latin party, you know exactly what happens. Like a birthday party, everybody comes, the family, the aunts, the uncles, the grandpas, everybody's dancing, drinking, having a good time. And that's just like, it's not really like that in Asian culture. Quite like that, you know? I like Latin women because they are generally a little more dominant. They're not quite super submissive, which I like. I value that in a partner. So ever since I was in the States, I've loved dating Latin women. I've been with a few Mexican girls, a Cuban girl, Peruvian girl, a Colombian and Venezuelan girl, or a few of Colombian and Venezuelan girls. So I have a pretty good idea of what Latin women are like because these are observations that I've made about all of them. They're usually a little less submissive, which I really appreciate in a woman. I think like that's something I really value in a partner, knowing that she's confident, she can handle herself, she doesn't need me to be there. I like that they are very affectionate, they're very warm, they're very loving. And that's not just with the women, it's with the family and friends in general. Like every time I see friends that I haven't seen in a while, dude, we're hugging and super warm. And when you meet somebody for the first time, it's a custom here to go in and you kiss them on the cheek. I don't know why, I always really enjoy doing that. I think it just breaks down that physical barrier right away, and it's like, I don't know, it's very charming. It's also true, I have noticed that they do have very high sex drives and they are very good in bed. They are the best. Man, this sounds really kind of gross talking about, but it's very true. Latin women, they know how to move their hips and they're for some reason just like really good at it. I think it's because of the culture, especially with dancing. Like dancing is so ingrained in their culture that they really know how to move their hips. I swear it's in their blood. It really translates into the bedroom really well. I do want to address the stereotype for a little bit because I think the gold digger stereotype, I can see where it comes from because I've heard that from both Colombians and foreigners who have come here. There's a very big population of the Paisa women that are very vain. You know, they care about their looks and you know, they are looking for people with money and that kind of thing, and that, you know, that definitely exists. So I don't want to diminish that. But if you go to the less wealthier areas, or places where there's not very many tourists, you'll find that there's a lot of just beautiful women that you can find on the street that are your neighbors, that are everywhere. And if you look there, that's where I think that's where you'll have a higher chance of finding someone who will be a really good partner, because I think in general Latin women, Colombians and Venezuelan women make very good partners. ¿Qué pasa? So I actually think Medellin specifically has a lot of similarities to LA based on how the women are, how there's this culture with like this elitist culture, and how the richer areas, at least for me, the vibe that I get from people really reminds me of LA. If you're looking for someone who's good wife material, I think there are definitely a lot of women here for you. The problem is you kind of have to know where to look, because if you just stick to the tourist places, those are where you're gonna find these gold diggers or these people that everybody talks about. There's this term here, people say this like gringo hunting. And it sounds really funny, but that's kind of true. A lot of people, they see foreigners and they see them as like a ticket out. They can get a passport somewhere, they see money. As a foreigner, just like having US dollars, it's just worth so much more here. So even for me, I'm not super rich, but even I have had that experience where people look at me and they're like, oh, you know, he probably comes from money. I think this is why dating apps can get really tricky, because you're not 100% sure of somebody's intentions. And it's really honestly hard to tell online, because I've matched with some girls that are just like naturally hot that aren't prostitutes. And funny story actually. So I matched with this girl, she was like 30, and I was asking her for what her job was, and you know, she looks like a girl that you would see at Dieras, you know, like nice big tits, boob job, dresses very provocatively, a little flirtatious, and these are all the pictures that she had on her Instagram. So I was like, oh, okay, I wonder. So her and I were talking, and I asked her what she did for a living. And she told me, oh, I work in like a warehouse, but she was super vague about it. So I asked her like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but are you like a prostitute? And then she got super offended and she blocked me. She called me an idiot. So yeah, dating apps can get really tricky, because there are a F-ton of prostitutes on there as well. And sometimes it's a little hard to tell the difference. It's interesting because every time I date somebody new, My Colombian friends will always tell me you got to be careful with who you talk to or who you trust, because there's a lot of women that will just come here and date me or date foreigners just so they can get more money. So I think that approaching women on the street is actually not a very effective tactic, because you can imagine they have a reputation for being some of the most beautiful women in the world. They're gonna have their guard up, especially, okay, so just think about it from a woman's perspective. Some random dude comes up to you don't really know them, you don't know their intentions, and you talk for 10 minutes and they ask for your phone number. Honestly, I don't think is the best way to meet people. The best way to meet people is through mutual friends. I've been attending church, and I've actually noticed church is a really good way to meet people too. The best way to meet people just in general is through mutual friends. I think this is just like a universal truth, because I would say the same thing. Like when you're dating in your 20s, 30s, as you get older, it gets harder to meet people, so the best way to do it is through friends. And this is why I recommend that you learn Spanish, because if you can learn Spanish, you'll be able to make some friends with Venezuelans or Colombians who will introduce you to your friends, and that opens up more people that you can date. I'm actually dating a friend of my Venezuelan friends. She was the friend of my friend, so because of that, I was immediately very trusting of her and her intentions, because I knew she wasn't gonna come and like rob me or something like that, you know? I say this all the time, please, please, please learn Spanish, because if you learn Spanish, pretty much this whole entire continent opens up to you for potential people you can date. And a lot of Brazilians, I mean, they speak Portuguese, but a lot of them speak Spanish as well. As opposed to you only being able to date the people that speak like English or broken English. And I've seen it work. I've seen some foreigners who are with Colombian wives who barely speak any Spanish, and their wife doesn't speak any English. And I'm just like, how the fuck do they communicate? That doesn't make any sense. In order for me to really have a deeper relationship, I have to be able to communicate well. The last girlfriend, the black girl that I dated, she spoke English, so we were able to connect really deeply. But the Venezuelan girl I'm seeing right now she only speaks Spanish. And thankfully, I'm comfortable enough with my Spanish that her and we can actually talk about pretty deep stuff. I do think Tinder is a really good way to meet people. It's just very hard to tell who's working and who's not. I'm actually banned on Tinder, and that's a story for another time. But I've met a few people on Bumble, and I don't know, they're just not quite the women I'm super interested in, and I just think it's better. I don't know, when you meet somebody in person, the chemistry is just always better, I think. In a few more months, when the country opens up again and I meet more people through my church, I think I'll be able to speak a little more on Colombians, because most of my dating experience has been with actually, it's been like half and half Venezuelans and Colombian girls. So let's move on to Venezuelan girls. So Venezuela and Colombia have a very interesting relationship. They're almost like brother and sister. And the reason for this is that years ago, when the narcos thing was really bad here in Colombia, a lot of people migrated over to Venezuela, and Venezuela kind of let them in with open arms. Now, because Venezuela is doing really poorly, there's a lot of Venezuelan migrants that have come to this country to start a new life. So if you go to any restaurant or place and you see the people that are working, I would be willing to bet it's about 50-50 Colombian and Venezuelan people. And it's hard to tell because they don't look really different, but you can tell in their accent. Venezuelans speak a lot faster, a lot more chill. They don't pronounce their S's and their C's a lot. Don't have your trained ears. It can be a little hard to hear it sometimes, but they definitely speak more like people from the coast. The Paisa accent is already pretty relaxed, but definitely Venezuelans, they speak faster and it's a lot more chill. It's a little weird right now though, because Venezuelans kind of have like a bad rep for being like second-class citizens. That's just kind of how Colombia is. I've talked about this a couple times, but there's a very strong elitism kind of sentiment here in Colombia. I've heard some Colombians, they just don't like Venezuelan people because they think they're like criminals and shit. It's kind of how like I hear some white people in the States talk about black people, how they're criminals, you know? But instead of a race, it's like from a different country. And obviously that's not true because, you know, there's bad and good people in any country that you go to. But there's definitely this sentiment here, this like elitism that you can sense against Venezuelans. The reason why I connect better with Venezuelans is two reasons. Number one, it's because this is not their country, so they kind of understand what I'm going through, trying to start a new life here. And obviously it's a lot different because their lives are definitely objectively a lot harder than what I've had to go through. But because they've had to start from scratch, they definitely most of the time have a little more maturity. They're definitely stronger, very competent. A lot of them are working very hard just to survive. And that's something that I really value in a partner because I don't want to just be taking care of a princess. I want someone who's struggled and conquered that. That's the kind of person I want to be with because I think they can teach me a lot. I connect with them because one, this is not their country, but actually number two, there's actually a very big Chinese population in Venezuela. I didn't know this before, but my Venezuelan friends tell me that, oh yeah, all the supermarkets are owned by Chinese people, the electronic stores, and they have a lot of Chinese restaurants there, so they kind of understand our culture. And I think because of that, Venezuelans are just naturally drawn to me a little more because they've been exposed to us in Venezuela. Whereas, I mean, I still have luck with Colombians, but it's still a little weirder, whereas Venezuelans, they're so used to us that I think it's easier to develop attraction because, you know, attraction usually is based off exposure. As far as looks go, I think it's very hard to tell them apart, to be completely honest. I think they're equally beautiful, and the only way you can really tell if they're Venezuelan is based on the way that they talk. I can't say if one's better than the other because I think, at least from my experience, that they're equally as attractive. Okay, so this isn't specifically to just Latin women, but for some reason when I turned 25, I started attracting like a lot of older women, like 30, 34, 35. I think the oldest women that I've ever been with was 13 years older than me. She was 37, I was 24. So for me, I just like older women in general that don't have kids because they're usually a lot more grounded, they're a lot more mature, they play less games, they kind of know what they want. So generally, if they want to have sex with you, they're gonna have sex with you. They're not gonna go through these games of trying to like make you work for it or whatever. The sex is usually better because women at that age are more comfortable with their bodies and they generally know how their body works. So instead of trying to be like so stuck in their head when they're in the moment, they just enjoy the sex because they know what their body likes. I think younger girls, you know, even if they're very career oriented, if they're around 23, 24, that's probably the youngest that I'll date at this point in my life. You see it all the time, these smart, beautiful young women that fall prey to like ugly men who treat them badly. When women are older, they've either been through several long-term relationships or have been divorced. And because of that, I think they just have a better understanding of what they want or what they're not looking for. They're just like emotional rocks sometimes. I think that's why I want an older black female dog. For some reason, I just have a connection with black dogs, from Samantha from my other place or Gino, or just dogs that I've experienced. But I just like that older feminine energy. I think that gives me peace. I don't know, that's just kind of the energy that I think complements me really well. I would love to hear your opinions, guys who have been with older women. Back me up on this or let me know what your experience has been. And lastly, I want to touch on my experience as dating as an Asian. I think that when I was in the States, I still did pretty well, but I could definitely understand that Asian men were at the bottom of the totem pole. Like, I can see where that comes from. There's a lot of women that just wouldn't give me the time of day because I wasn't tall enough or I was Asian. Yeah, you could definitely sense that, but here it's not the case. I'm very happy to report that here it actually feels like we do a little better than our male counterparts because specifically in Colombia, there's not a lot of Asian people here. So already we have that exotic factor. And if you can speak Spanish, bro, it impresses the shit out of people. People are just like, oh my God, this is crazy. And it makes you even look better. And then I think in turn, it just gives you a lot more options to dating. Weirdly enough, being Asian here is actually a benefit for us because, you know, we're exotic. Height doesn't really matter to Latin people that much. So being here, I know that's a really big insecurity that men in general have, so you don't have to worry about that here. 3, I think there's actually just like a really big Asian and Latin connection, and I think that's definitely been accentuated a lot more now. We have a lot of similar values, traditional values in our family, and I just think Asians are just a little more disciplined, whereas Latin people are a little more free and definitely just are more in touch with like their body and themselves and are warmer in general. So that would be the big difference. One of the reasons why we make such good partners too is that since Latin women are generally a little more dominant, Asian men are generally a little more passive. And I think because of that, we complement each other really well. This is a big generalization, but I think that you guys could agree with me. That's probably true for the majority of cases. But yeah, honestly, I'm happy to report that being here, my dating experience has been really good. I wish that, you know, obviously we weren't in quarantine, so I would have been able to date more people. I'm sorry I couldn't quite go into tips on how to meet people. I'll definitely put that in another video because I think this video is already really long. Like, subscribe, yada yada, you know what to do. And thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.